Hello, it's your friendly neighborhood host, JT Wheatley here again, back for another episode of the History of Comics podcast, this time on the life of Ozamu Tezuka, the god of manga. While most of this podcast series has mostly focused on American subjects, comic books are a worldwide phenomenon, with one of the most significant audiences coming out of Japan. The word for comic books there is manga, and among the artists, the most successful by far was Ozamu Tezuka, who is called the god of manga in Japan, arguably just as significant to the medium than Stan Lee and Will Eisner, if not bigger. Tezuka set a standard for both manga and anime, the word for Japanese animation, and one is yet to be surpassed. Manga is formed from two words, man, meaning involuntary or unconscious, and ga, which means pictures. In Japan, it is merely Japan's word for comic books and cartooning, but outside the country it refers to comics that originally published in Japan, just as anime refers to animation originally from Japan. It was coined in 1814 by the legendary printmaker Kazuki Kika Hakusei, and would eventually come to mean humorous drawings. It was not the first way the Japanese describe kamikusei, the popular translation of comics, along with tobi, or tobi pictures, meaning satiric caricatures, which was coined by a 12th century Buddhist monk who drew Chuje Giga drawings to mock human foibles. Originally put on scrolls, which could be up to 80 feet long, and their format is very similar to comic books today. This was originally in China, but later adopted by the Japanese. It was in 1775 that Kiyoshi picture books that many argue were the original comic books first appeared. Noted for their yellow back covers, each volume was 10 pages, with the books lasting 2 to 3 volumes apiece, and were originally created by educated people meant for an educated audience. An attempt to expand the audience, along with government repression due to its political satires and commentary, led to this genre ending in the mid-1800s, though. During the 19th century, Japan was a closed society until it was forced open its borders due to American naval power, after which numerous foreigners flocked to the country seeking fortune and adventure. One in particular was Charles Workman, a British cartoonist in residence at Yokohama, who began the Japan Punch in 1862, which featured the political cartoons and humor strips similar to the magazine of the same name back in the UK. While originally meant for British audiences living in Japan, the magazine was popular with Japanese as well, especially the one-panel cartoons, punchy, or punch pictures. Soon, Japanese cartoonists started to publish their own cartoons in the same vein. Some even considered Workman to be the father of modern manga, and they hold an annual ceremony in his honor at his grave at Yokohama Foreign General Cemetery. As for cartoons, they continued to flourish during the Shogunate and Meiji period, just as its great artist was about to appear. On November 3rd, 1928, the same date as the Meiji the Great's birthday, Ozamu Tezuka was born in Toyokan in Osaka Prefecture of Japan, the eldest of 3 children, whose family were the descendants of the Hotori Hanzo, the legendary samurai ninja of the Shogoku period, famous in popular culture from the Shadow Warriors series starring Sonny Chiba and the Quentin Tarantino Kill Bill films. Osamu was named after the last character in the Emperor's name. The Tezukas were a wealthy family, with his father being a manager at the Shomotono Metals, while his grandparents were lawyers and doctors. His mother would take young Osamu to a local Tarigasu Grand Theater, which was headlined by an all-female Katsuzuka Revu musical theater troupe. Osamu would later credit his mother for this, as musicals would later inspire his costume design and drawings, along with emphasizing the eyes as actors did. Osamu would draw from an early age, with his parents encouraged his way to keep quiet, and he created his first comic, Pin Shi-chan, at age 9. Soon, Osamu was reportedly drawing so much his mother had to erase pages in his notebook to keep up with his output. However, his first love was animation, and his father, Yataka, was an amateur photographer who brought a movie projector home so they could screen cartoons. Young Osamu especially loved Walt Disney and all his cartoons and would idolize the entertainment legend throughout his life. From his home country, Osamu admired Sui Takuga and Uno Juza. Tagawa was a manga artist most noted for his Stray Pups Norakuro series about an anthropomorphic black and white dog in the army with a fellow dog, which revolutionized the industry, leading to Tagawa being remembered as one of the pioneers of manga. Juzu was considered the founding father of Japanese science fiction, and Ikito Juzo, the captain in the classic anime series Space Battleship Yamato, is named after him in his honor. During the time of Osamu's youth, Osaka had its own cheap comic industry in the Akuhan, or Red Book, after the color of their covers, which became popular in Japanese culture, which populated Osaka along with newspaper strips. Osamu loves them so much he had his parents subscribe to a newspaper so he could follow Stray Spots Narakura by one of his idols, Suji Takugawa. However, this is also the time of oppressive Japanese empire, with cartoonists and artists often arrested and jailed for their work. It got so bad the term jail editor was formed to apply to an artist who agreed to take the rap on a rotating basis and thus go to jail for everyone else. It got worse when Japan invaded China in 1937, and by 1938, many comics in Akuhan were banned for being harmful and poor quality, a timeless term for government censorship throughout the world. But really because they were critical of the government, thus they were canceled and the artists were arrested. Artists that weren't jailed were forced to make propaganda cartoons, such as strips that were airdropped on enemy forces, depicting their wives and girlfriends cheating on them because they were busy fighting the Japanese. This even led to the first feature-length anime movie, the black and white Morotaro's Divine Sea Warriors in Japan on April 12, 1945, in which Disney-like animals defend the Pacific Islands from the U.S. forces. Written and directed by Nusuwa Seo, the 74-minute movie was a sequel to the Motoro no Imawashi, a 37-minute short film that was also in black and white. Osamu saw it at a bombed-out theater out of town and loved it, stating that he wept when he saw what Japanese animation could really do, seeing the hints of hopes and dreams that are all the war propaganda. At 16, Osamu worked at a wartime asbestos factory where his bosses would beat him if they caught him drawing. Then, Osaka was firebombed in 1945, and on June 1st, with 4,000 people killed and hundreds of thousands homeless, which Osamu witnessed firsthand. This made him Osamu a pacifist for life, and to avoid military service, he enrolled in medical school at Osaka University. Originally, it was also a lifelong dream for him to be a doctor, as when he was a young boy, his arms swelled up and became very ill until a doctor cured him. A few weeks later, after enrolling, though, Japan had surrendered and U.S. occupation had begun. The result of both the repression of the former Japanese Empire and the war made Japan technologically starved as it rebuilt, with only 1,000 TVs in the country by 1954. As a result, new forms of entertainment filled the void, such as kamishiba, paper dramas, in which itinerant storytellers narrated tales illustrated by gakigi, or dramatic pictures. Many manga artists got their start making such productions, while low-tech companies began to boom across the country. During the U.S. occupation, traditional Japanese stories with nationalistic undertones, like samurai tales, were banned, so fantasy and science fiction prevailed. Akuhan returned as well and were easily accessible by children thanks to pay libraries, where they could rent books, which soon boomed around the country. After World War II, Osamu Tezuka felt manga could not only be used to entertain, but also convince others to care for the world as well. Thus, at the age of 17, he published his first work in Diary of Ma-chan, the 4-panel comic strip about the adventures of Ma-chan, a preschool boy. While crude compared to his later work, Tezuka's style was already apparent, and the series would run for 73 strips from January 1st, 1946 to March 31st, 1946, in Tsukukuman Shimbun, an elementary school paper. It was become so popular that Ma-chan dolls were produced, representing the first time Osamu Tezuka's creations were ever merchandise. While still in medical school, Osamu Tezuka next made The New Treasure Island in 1947. It came about when fellow manga artist Sachimi Sake pitched an idea of adapting the classic Treasure Island story by Robert Louis Stevenson. The end result was Sen Terigara Jima, only loosely based on the original story, but ended up selling 400,000 copies after it was released on April 1st, 1947, thanks to its Disney-like style and cinematic action, which stunned audiences. Tezuka's cinematic style was influenced by the legendary cartoonist Milt Gross, whose page layouts in his classic graphic novel He Done Her Wrong, a 1930 book that is considered a precursor to the modern graphic novel, influenced Tezuka's work. Tezuka bought the book as a child and studied it thoroughly, especially the silent pages. Tezuka and The New Treasure Island became an immediate sensation and will be a part of a larger explosion of manga's popularity in Japan, which many calling this the golden age of manga. In 1951, Tezuka joined the Tokyo Children's Manga Association with fellow artists Baba Noburo, Otojiro, Furusa Hideo, Fuki Ichi, Iri Segiro, and Nagishi Kamichi. He also went to Tokyo, buoyed by the success of New Treasure Island, to find a publisher for his future works. The publisher, Kambojushe, turned him down, but the publisher Shinshike Kakiku agreed to produce The Strange Voyage of Dr. Tiger, while Domi Shoputase purchased the mysterious Dr. Karonoko. Meanwhile, Tezuka would produce his first masterpieces, all while he was still attending medical school. First was The Lost World on December 20th, 1948, a 2-volume series about a planet approaching Earth that is revealed to be inhabited by dinosaurs. The second was Metropolis on September 15th, 1949, a single-volume science fiction story that takes place in the future, involving evolution and artificial life. Tezuka was inspired to create a more real story after Treasure Island, and within 6 months produced the 160-page epic. While its title was a reference to the classic 1927 science fiction film of the same name, along with the story having some parallels, Tezuka would say he only saw a single frame of the film before he produced the manga. Nevertheless, Osamu Tezuka's Metropolis is known as Robotic Angel in Germany due to objections by Frederick William Murray Foundation over the title. The manga would later be adapted into a highly acclaimed anime movie in 2001, directed by Rentaro, with a screenplay by Koichiro Otomo, best known as the creator of the classic Akira manga. Personal note, Akira is still in my top 5 of the best comic books of all time. Next was Osamu Tezuka's first major success, Younger Emperor Leo, which was serialized in Manga Shonen from November 1950 to April of 1954, later be collected in the 3 separate volumes. For Younger Emperor, Osamu was inspired by Bambi, the classic Disney film, which he had watched 80 times at least, but this story was about a lion raised by humans who teaches fellow lions about civilization. For this story, Osamu believed that self-aware animals would actually try to befriend humans rather than cower from them. The anime, which would be made by Mushi Productions, Tezuka's future animation company, ran from October 6, 1965 to September 28, 1966, running for 52 episodes and would be followed up by numerous anime feature films due to its popularity. So popular, in fact, that many believe that Disney heavily borrowed from it when it made its classic animated feature The Lion King in 1994. Both stories do have similarities, from Simba, name, and the Lion King being close to Kimba, dealing with villainous lions, sage baboons, and even speaking to their fathers in spirit and the cloud formation in the sky. The latter, which was parodied in the Simpsons episode Round Springfield, the 26th episode of the 6th season, which aired on April 30th, 1995. In the parody of the classic scene, Mufasa, also voiced by James Earl Jones, Simba's father, originally calls him Kimba before correcting himself to Simba. However, the Lion King's directors claim to this day they had no knowledge of Kimba the White Lion before making the film, stating the main influence was William Shakespeare's Hamlet, which does loosely follow the plot up to the happy ending. It is also interesting to note, as previously pointed out, that the original Jungle Emperor was heavily influenced by Disney's Bambi, whom Tezuka idolized, and would one day be known as the Walt Disney of Japan. But first, he had to graduate from medical school and really get his career started. Osamu Tezuka's success put him at a crossroads in his medical studies, as he was well on his way to becoming a doctor, while manga was still considered not to be a viable career path. With this dilemma, Tezuka asked his mother what he should do, and she replied, you should do work that you like to do the most. So manga it was, though Tezuka would eventually get his doctorate in 1961 from Osaka University, producing a dissertation on the sperm production of a Japanese pond snail, which he illustrated in his studio, from which he would use for his thesis. By 1952, the U.S. occupation ended and the power was transferred back to the Japanese government. The previous year, Osamu Tezuka graduated from the medical school, but chose to focus on his manga career. He would next publish Ambassador Adam in Kosue's Shonen magazine, a short manga series in 1951 to modest success, with many readers especially loving a humanoid boy called Adam. After being deluged with fan letters about the character, Tezuka's producer encouraged him to create a series focused just around him and give the boy human emotions for more character. He was inspired by another Disney classic, Pinocchio, when he made Tetsuwan Adam, Iron-Armed Adam, or The Mighty Adam in 1952, which was the same year the Disney film premiered in Japan, along with an incident working at a hospital during his medical studies that also provided ideas when he was punched in the face by an American GI. Tezuka created a story about a heroic boy robot, Astro, created by a scientist, Dr. Tenmei, to replace his dead son, Tobio, even imprinting his son's memories on him. However, Tenmei soon realizes that Astro is not a replacement for his son, as he would never grow old and develops taste for the artificial over natural world. For example, he prefers cubes to flowers. The series first appeared in Konushi's Shonen on February 1952 and would headline this magazine for 16 years, along with a 2-year newspaper serialization in 1967 and 69. The character became so popular he was granted an honorary Japanese citizenship on April 7, 2003, the only fictional character to be given such an honor. He would later star in a live-action TV show in 1959, though Tezuka believed animation was the best medium for him, and as mentioned earlier, Tezuka's original love. However, he still had to make a few more classic mangas to produce first. With the success of Tetsuwan Atom, Osamu Tezuka next created Ribbon no Kishi, Princess Knight, in 1953, which would be a serialized in Shoujo Club magazine from 1953 to 1956. The manga followed the adventures of Sapphire, a girl princess accidentally born with a blue heart of a boy and the pink heart of a girl, while also having to pretend to be a boy to prevent the evil Duke Duralum Nunen from seizing the throne of the fantasy world of Silverland. The gender-bending character was inspired by Takara Revue's all-female acting troupe from Tetsuga's youth, as the female actors played male and female roles, and would play to the larger themes of gender in the series. As Sapphire takes on many traditional male roles, from hero to prince to defend her kingdom, and the character remains an icon in the larger exploration of sexuality, especially in Japanese culture. Tezuka also revolutionized the shoujo genre of manga as well, which was originally just gag strips and tales of good behavior for girls, to creating one with a creative narrative and a true female superhero. Princess Knight will receive numerous adaptations afterwards, from a musical to a radio and of course anime series, which Tezuka would tackle later. In 1954, Tezuka began what would be his life's work with Phoenix, a story about reincarnation, with each volume telling a different story in a different time. He wouldn't publish the first story, Dawn, until 1967 in Manga magazine, taking place in the 2040 to 70 era of Japan under Queen Himiko, with the second volume, Future, taking place to be the final story in the series chronologically in the year 3034 near the end of mankind. Tezuka would add to the series throughout his career, tackling different eras over what would ultimately be 12 volumes until 1988. These series would also see numerous live-action and anime adaptations, something that Tezuka kept showing interest in. In 1958, Toei Animation asked Tezuka if they could adapt his manga Shongoku the Monkey into an anime, which would be made into Alakazam the Great in 1960, about a monkey who learns magic believing it would make him a king, only to see it blow up in his face. Toei claimed Tezuka actually directed it, but he denied it, saying the most he did for the studio was to show up and pose for a few publicity photos. However, reportedly did Tezuka interested in making animation, like his idol Walt Disney, but he was going to do it himself. Tezuka also had his personal life move up when he married Asuko Okode, with whom he would have 2 children, Makoto and Romiko. Despite being married and becoming a father, Makoto was born on August 11, 1961. Tezuka's professional life wasn't slowing down, as he was now moving into animation. To achieve this, Osamu Tezuka founded Mushi Productions to make the Atom cartoons, along with being a rival to Toei Animation, the legendary anime studio many know today for producing such classic series as Dragon Ball Z and One Piece. Mushi struggled with the budget for Astro Boy, though, and thus turned to the William Hanna and Joseph Barbera of the legendary Hanna-Barbera Studios. To the producers of the classic The Flintstones cartoon, they adapted the show to 12 frames a second, half the Disney standard, allowing each episode to be made for just $5,000. The cartoon premiered on June 1st, 1963 in Japan and became an instant hit, jump-starting Japan's animation industry. The series ran from January 1st, 1963 to December 31st, 1966 for a total of 193 episodes. It was such a success in America as well, where it was redubbed in English and became known as Astro Boy. Fred Ladd at NBC Productions adapted the show, releasing 104 episodes of the series, running from September 7, 1963 to August 20, 1965. Though American censors will have problems with some of the content, a theme that will occur throughout Tezuka's career and manga in general. For example, the scene of a dog being operated on was considered grotesque, which raised objections from Tezuka, pointing out animal treatment in general in hunting and food production. Ultimately, only 104 of the episodes originally aired in the U.S. due to the dark content like this, along with the fact that it was still in black and white at a time when TV in America was converting to color. The success of Astro Boy did bring Osamu Tezuka to America in 1964, where he went to attend the New York World's Fair and finally got to meet his professional idol, Walt Disney, at his It's a Small World exhibit. To his surprise, Disney said he loved Astro Boy, stating he would hope to create something just as good one day. Osamu Tezuka will remember it as one of the greatest moments of his life, especially considering how much Disney influenced Astro Boy directly. He was inspired by Pinocchio, after all, along with manga and anime in general. Most significantly was the innovation Disney Animation did with large eyes of the characters, something that Tezuka imitated and thus every manga and anime artist did afterwards. The trick Disney discovered was that the faces were notoriously hard to draw, even today, but essential to convey emotion of a character. However, eyes are easier, and by making them larger, it focuses the viewer on them and thus easier to express the emotion of the character through the eyes. It's a trick that artists across the world continue to this day. As the saying goes, the eye is the window to the soul. Thus, making them bigger makes it easier to see into a character. So, that is another of Walt Disney's infinite contributions to comics and animation, but this podcast is about Osamu Tezuka, so back to him. The success of Astro Boy also brought Osamu Tezuka to the attention of other entertainment professionals. Reportedly, according to Tezuka's own diary, Walt Disney once reached out to him again about working on a science fiction project, but nothing came of it. He was also approached in 1965 by film director Stanley Kubrick to be the art director for his next film, 2001: A Space Odyssey. Tezuka had to turn Kubrick down due to the fact he couldn't afford to leave his studio to work in England for a year, but when the film was eventually released, he loved it, and he would play the soundtrack when he had to work long nights. Mushi Productions continued to push the animation medium in Japan, producing other shows like Goku no Dakudeken, an adaptation of Princess Knight, Kimba the White Lion, Dororo, Ashika, and Shikanojo. The studio also pushed more adult-oriented works such as 1001 Nights, Cleopatra, Japan's first X-rated animated movie, and nearly the first in the United States, if not for Fritz the Cat being released a few days earlier on April 18, 1972, the Cleopatra's April 24th release, and The Belladonna of Sadness. However, Tezuka's demanding standards led to unrealistically suppressed budgets to outbid competitors, thus leading to the company becoming unprofitable. He would leave the studio in 1968, forming a new company, Tezuka Productions, while Mushi would go bankrupt in 1973. A new Mushi Productions was formed in 1977 and continues to operate to this day. Originally, Tezuka Productions was formed to manage manga production and copyrights, taking subcontract work from Mushi, such as Fushiga no Momero, Marvelous Momo, an adaptation of Tezuka's manga about a 9-year-old girl tasked with caring for two younger brothers when their mom dies. To do so, she is gifted with a magical bottle of pills that allows her to age to 19. The manga ranged from September 1970 to March of 1972 in Shogoku and Senichi magazine, with the anime running for 26 episodes from October 3, 1971 to March 26, 1972, even airing on TBS in the United States. Back on the manga side, the rise of Kakigi, manga styled for more adult audiences, led to Tezuka to create Calm magazine in January 1967, as an outlet for himself and other manga artists to produce more adult avant-garde work. The first 7 stories of Tezuka's Phoenix would appear in the magazine, along with being a showcase for Murasaki Yamada, the famous female artist who first got her start in the magazine. However, the magazine would end in 1972 with Mushi Productions going bankrupt the following year. Tezuka would reach a low point in his career. At 45, Osamu Tezuka was called the Old Man, whose work belonged in museums. As a result, he fell into a deep depression. Much of this was from younger generations of artists who wanted to change manga to Gakigi, dramatic pictures, believing manga too kiddie-friendly, similar to how some artists in America prefer graphic novels over comic books. They borrowed Gakigi from Kimisaibi for more mature works. Akito Shoten, the publisher of Shonen Champion, a weekly magazine, took pity on Osamu Tezuka and offered him the right to publish anything he wanted after hearing he was planning to retire in 1973. Tapping into his medical background, Tezuka created Black Jack, about a rebel surgeon who investigated murder mysteries, first appearing in Weekly Shonen Champion on November 19, 1973, and would run through October 14, 1983, creating 17 volumes in his original run. Along with resurrecting Tezuka's career, the character today is considered his third most popular creation after Astro Boy and Kimba. Of course, the character will be readapted in other formats from a live-action series and anime, along with other manga artists doing remakes of the original series he became so popular. So much so, many young people in Japan were inspired to go into the medical profession due to their manga hero, Blackjack, though his unorthodox methods were condemned by the medical community. Tezuka also meant for him to be entertainment, though he hoped to inspire a different take of medical practices. The manga did have numerous science fiction and fantasy elements that wouldn't apply to the real world anyway, from Blackjack performing major surgery on himself to Pakinko, his assistant adopted daughter who was originally a parasitic twin now inside a plastic exoskeleton he built for her. Overall, though, Blackjack showed that Tezuka could compete with the new Gakiki artist, if not show them a thing or two. Simply put, Osamu Tezuka was back, and he was about to revolutionize manga for a second time. His next work was Buddha, which first was published on September 1972 and ran to December of 1983, an epic covering the life of Gautama Buddha, the founder of Buddhism. While noted for being humorless, it was also visually explicit and thought-provoking. It is considered by many to be one of Tezuka's last epics. The series would later be reprinted in America, winning the Eisner and the Harvey Awards for Best Foreign Material in 2004 and 2005, and has been adapted into anime movies, the first in 2011 and the second in 2014, produced by Tetsuya Pictures and animated by Toei. Despite being agnostic, Tetsuya would later be buried in a Buddhist ceremony when he died, and the first Buddha film was released on May 28th, 2011, timed with the 750th memorial of Shinran Shonin, the founder of the Jodo Shinshu sect of Buddhism. As if doing a biopic on one of history's great religious figures wasn't enough, Tezuka then turned his attention to one of the great tyrants, Adolf Hitler. Message to Adolf ni Tsugi in Japan, and just Adolf in early English reprints, were first published on January 6, 1983, and ran to May 30th, 1985, running for a total of 5 volumes. The story was actually one of 3 Adolfs: Adolf Hitler, Adolf Camille, an Azeki Akazani Jew living in Japan, and Adolf Kaufmann, Camille's best friend who is of German and Japanese descent. All 3 become entangled in the quest of Shoei Toge, a Japanese reporter searching for documents that could turn the tide of World War II, all while delivering an epic touching on racism, nationality, and spy fiction. Upon completion, Adolf received the Konichi's Manga Award in 1986 for general manga. A large part of Osamu Tezuka's revival during this time was adapting his style to more modern sensibilities. Osamu emphasized theatrics, he grew up next to theater actors, and fourth wall breaking, using non-sexual Hanakichi-shugi-style characters to break the tension. Tezuka actually started this change back in 1967 with his manga series Dororo, a 4-volume series that ran from August 27, 1967 to October of 1969 in the Weekly Shonen Sunday. It was inspired by the success of Shigeru Miyazaki's GGG no Kitaro, which popularized the yoki folklore character's subgenre of manga. In Tetsuga's Dororo, the story was about a ronin, Hikamiro, a young orphan Dororo, who traveled Japan during the Shigoku period, 1467 to 1600, which is noted for its extreme social upheaval. As this ronin must defeat 48 demons to restore his body and ultimately his humanity. The name Dororo comes from Tetsuya's childhood memory of his friends pronouncing Dorobu, Japanese for thief, as Dororo. The story would receive multiple adaptations, including 2 anime series, one in 1969 and one in 2019, along with a live-action movie and a video game. He would also work in characters from past works into current ones as Easter eggs for readers, but in different roles. For example, Astro Boy appears in Blackjack as a patient. Osamu has also developed a star system to keep track of his characters, revising them periodically based on their rankings in popularity and salary. Tetsuya joked his fictional characters' pay was the equivalent of Hollywood movie actors, which also allowed for fast reading, as you can easily recognize characters and process a manga really fast. Osamu Tezuka would continue to work up until his death on February 1st, 1989, when he was diagnosed with stomach cancer, and reportedly his last lines were, "I'm begging you, let me work," as a nurse had to take his drawing equipment away. He is credited today with making manga as popular as it is. With the help of his assistants, he produced 170,000 pages across 700 titles in multiple genres. Osamu also produced 110 films and the first Japanese color cartoon, Jungle Emperor, in 1965, along with revolutionizing the shogi genre of manga with Princess Knight. In 1971, the publisher Shunichi established the 1 million yen Tezuka Award, Japan's highest honor for new comics artists. The year of his death, in 1989, the Emperor of Japan awarded him the sacred treasure, Roishubei, for his service to his nation. The town where he grew up, Tekazarazuka, Yogo, created a museum in his honor, which was inaugurated on April 25, 1994, while stamps of the Tezuka were issued in 1997. This only scratched the surface of numerous awards and accolades he would receive throughout his during and after his lifetime. He also received the Inkpot Award in 1980 at the San Diego Comic Con, while his works Buddha and Dororo would receive Eisners long after he died. Today, many of his work is preserved by his son, Makoto Tezuka, who is part owner of Tezuka Productions, and has worked with releasing many of his father's posthumous works, along with running his own company, Neo Tetra. Most significantly, though, is when the Japanese call Osamu Tezuka the god of manga, they are essentially saying he is the god of comics. And with the breadth of his works, it is hard to argue otherwise. I would like to thank the chief source of this episode, which appropriately enough is a comic book. The Comics Book History of Comics, number 3, written by Fred Van Lintel with art by Ryan Dunlavivi. This is a great comic book series in general that provides history on numerous great subjects like Osamu Tezuka. This issue also continued a little-known incident on when some underground artists tried to parody Mickey Mouse, along with revealing who the highest-selling female comic artist in history is. A great read, so pick it up wherever the books and comic books are sold. Also, I'd like to apologize for my many mispronunciations in this series. I did try my best to get many of the Japanese names down, but I have no doubt I screwed many things up. Feel free to ridicule me if you must, but did the best I could. And also, we're comic book fans. We've been pronouncing Magneto wrong since its inception. And now is July 10th, 2025, time for the favorite comic of the week. Trinity, Daughter of Wonder Woman, number 2 by Tom King and Belen Ortega, which is a great issue that finds the teenager Trinity. Of course, all three of them are bouncing through trying to track down some superpowered corgis. Yeah, it's as ridiculous and fun as it sounds. With the teenager one finding herself in the timeline where she meets Jason Todd Robin right before he's about to be killed by the Joker. And, well, sparks start to fly between these two. This is a great fun issue with King really having fun with the whole concept, and you really like seeing the teenage Trinity kind of really clicking with Jason Todd. He's more of a gritty, angry kid, but there's nice boyishness to him. And it's also funny when Trinity sees his outfit, which is, that classic Robin green Speedo and booties, and she just starts laughing at it. But also, she kind of, there's a nice little romantic, young love thing going there that is matched by the tragedy that Trinity knows that he's about to get killed by the Joker and go into a really dark path. And she even tries to warn him at some point, but of course he can't mess with the timelines. But it's a very sweet and a little bit of a tragic issue, and really well done. And Ortega's art is absolutely gorgeous, has a nice cartoony style too, but realistic enough to also add to the more darker moments. Like I said, it's kind of a tragic ending there because she tries to warn him off going on his dark Red Hood path, but unfortunately there's no changing it. So it's, great issue in general, great fun, and this Trinity's become one of my favorite characters in DC Comics, and this is easily one of the most fun comics DC has right now. So with that, we will continue with another edition of the Archives. Join me again next week for likely another edition of the Archives. Still hard at work. About to actually get some episodes recorded, and we'll see where it goes from there. But, what are you going to do? But until then, go out and enjoy yourself a good comic book, and definitely check out Trinity, Daughter of Wonder Woman. One of my favorite DC comic books they're putting out right now.